Okay, this is all Shalom Aleichem, this is a good morning. Now we're learning Tanya, and again, I really do apologize for taking 20 minutes, it should have taken 2 minutes. We're learning Perek Ches, Tanya chapter 8. Perek Ches. We're going to start on Yud Beis Amud Aleph, Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, pardon me, which is, I guess, page 25. The opposite of page 24 is Yud Gimel. And we're going to begin 4 lines from the top of the page where it says V'gam achar kach. Now Rabbi saying, what I'm doing now, we haven't learned Tanya in 3 weeks. Last week my son had a Mishnayos competition, 2 weeks ago with Shavuos. You haven't learned Tanya in 3 weeks, which is enough time to forget. So I gave you a class the Sunday before Shavuos. And we talked about Chibut HaKever and Paltiel again, and it wasn't our most happy Tanya class. I had to teach it because it's written in the Tanya. I'm going to relearn it quickly. This morning I came to Yeshiva, I asked one of my collaborators, my co-workers, what's Perek Ches doing in Tanya? What's it doing there, Perek Ches? He says he was trying to, he told me, he's not trying to explain what Gehenim is, what Kafakel is, what Chibut HaKever is. He's trying to explain the effects of an Aveda. That was how he put it. Okay, we'll go with that. The big picture is that there are 4 parakim, Beis, Gimel, Dal, and Hey, dedicated to Nefesh Elokis and Kedusha, Klip Kedusha, that go into 2 discussions. First discussion is, what is a neshama? And the second discussion is, what happens to a neshama when it does a mitzvah and learns Torah. Then you have 3 parakim, Vav, Zayin, Ches, 6, 7, 8, that talk about Klipa, the Nefesh Habamis. And again, it should be divided up into 2 conversations. First, what is the Nefesh Habamis? And second, what's the effect of doing an Aveda? The difference is that it's less balanced. There's much, in the Klipa side, he focuses much more on what happens when you do an Aveda than on the Etzem Minyan of the Nefesh Habamis. Okay? So, and the end of it is this Perek, chapter 8, Perek Ches. And I don't know how to contextualize this. I'm not sure you can make that into a verb, but I do what I want here, right? English is like Yiddish. Just stretch it around a new word. But this is how I'm going to tell it to you. I'll put it to these aces. It says in Sforim, it's brought in Chasidus, that when a neshama finishes the shlichus in this world, it needs to forget Chiyuv the Hayam, has to forget how this world looks. Why? Because as long as the neshama has any concept of how the physical world looks, there's no way it can relate to the Ilum Esalyenim, to Ganin. The disparateness, the Einarech, the distance between the Ruchniistic world and the Gashmiistic world is so far away that in order for a neshama to go into the Ilum Esalyenim and experience the oil and the peace of the Ilum Esalyenim, it must totally forget this world, because if it doesn't, it's going to interfere with it. And when Chassidus brings this discussion, they bring Fashidim and Mishalim for it, for different examples. And one of the examples which are brought is, I want to mention it to you last time, is the example about Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera lived in Babel. And he wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. One of the interesting, here I go again with distractions. I remember reading the Gemara and thinking, oi, Rabbi Yehuda was his Rebbe. There's a Sikh from the Rebbe, look at the Sikh, it's a very deep Sikh on it. But Rabbi Yehuda was his Rebbe. Rabbi Yehuda from the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda felt that Bavela Yuvo, the Shom Yihu is an Isser Lav. Bavela Yuvo, the Yidden should come to Babel, and that they should stay in Babel is an Isser Lav. You're not allowed to go to Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed to go to Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed. You're in Golus. No, it's the same Gemara in Ksubis. This is what the whole world is fighting about Tziyonis. It's all the same sugi in Ksubis. The sugi of Eretz Yisrael is the end of Masechet Ksubis. Bavel, the Tziyonim quoted and the anti-Tziyonim quoted. Everybody uses the same Gemara to make their case. This is also history, unfortunately. It's a long time ago. So Rabbi Zera had to sneak out of Babel without his Rebbe knowing. That was Rabbi was his Rebbe. And Rabbi Zera wanted to go to Yisrael. Why? Because ain't Teda can Teda say Yisrael. Because I'll say there's no Teda in Yisrael. You can see and Teda without Hashem Yerushalayim. So he snuck out of Babel. He went to Yisrael. And the Gemara speaks about other Amiroyim who ended up, they also went to Yisrael because they wanted to pass away and be buried in Yisrael, so they shouldn't go through Tzad and Mechilas. It says in Sfarim, but it never brings it, that Chiyas HaMesim happens only in Yisrael. So the Neshamas and Chutzlas have to go through tunnels. It's called Tzara de Mechilis. And the Rebbe spoke once about the Rebbe, the Tzion and the Friedrich Rebbe, that it's a piece of Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe's Tzion and the tunnel from that Tzion to Yisrael is a shtickle Eretz Yisrael. There's a Sikh from the Rebbe about the Shtachos. Tavshin Yudal Yud Shvat. But, so he went to Yisrael. But he wanted to learn Torah says Yisrael. So there's two girses. I think it's a Bali and Yerushalmi. One girse that he fasted 40 fasts, and another girse that he fasted 100 fasts. The Shtakach Talmud Bavli, you should forget Talmud Bavli, but learn Talmud Yerushalmi. So of course the Bavusta Kashi is a very Mishnah Pigiyos. If a person forgets Torah, it's Chai ben Nafshe. If you forget Limud HaTorah, you Chai Miseh. And the Mishnah says, Yochel Tokfala, Mishnah says. If you forgot the Torah because the Torah is too heavy for you, it's making your head explode. Talmud Leimar Pentishkach Ache Yeshe v'Yesire Miliba. If you forget the Torah because your head is heavy, no one holds it against you. But if you sit down and make yourself forget, and Abzeda did exactly that. Yeshe v'Yesire Miliba. How could you do this? You learned Torah in Bavel. Abzeda was not Stam, he was an Amoyre. He was the Nasi Adar, right before Rabbi Ben Achmeni. Rabbi Abzeda. No, the Rabbi Rabbi Yosef. I take that back. It's different. Okay, erase that from the table. Yeah? But Abzeda was the great Amiroy. How do you forget Torah? How do you make yourself forget Torah? So of course the teretz is, and it's common sense. Abzeda didn't forget the halachas HaTorah. He forgot the method of how you come to the halachas. Torah is dinim. And the dinim ultimately, or in some way, are derived from the Torah, from Sukkot. And there's a process of analysis, of study, of learning the Chumash, and the Tanakh, and figuring out halachas. Rab Zayda made himself forget the process. So he should be able to adapt the process of the interpretation of Psukim in Eretz Yisrael, which was a Torah of Sholem. There's no Machlekes, there's no Imtim Talaymas. You ask a Shaila, you give a Torah, you bring a Pasuk, and it's done. So he didn't forget the Torah, he forgot the method, the form. The B'machshake Meishivani is a Talmud Bavli. The whole idea that the only way you can find the truth of Torah is by the famous marshal that everyone once explained by Riechas Nasira. Mentapta, you touch and you touch and you touch until you find the door after mistaking for a window and a closet which has been sealed shut and a door which is broken. You finally exit. So in Talmud Bavli they have to touch. Talmud Yerushalmi they see. So this is what Rav Zayda had to forget. So the Chassidus brings this as a marshal to this idea. That when a neshama leaves this world, it has to forget Chizadai, forget about this world completely. It's the only way you can go to the Yom Yisrael. Now, forgetting about this world has a lot of processes, right? It says also in the same line in Tzamach and Zayin that between Gan Eden and Gan Eden, forget about when you're leaving this world and you're going Lamayla, but you're already in Gan Eden and you have an Aliyah, and there's different Madrigas and Aliyahs, and on some level you have Shloish Aliyahs B'chol Yeh. Shachas Mincha Ma'ariv, every neshama in Gan Eden has an Aliyah. So between one Gan Eden and another Gan Eden, the Elmus Hal Yenim, you have to go through what's called Nahar Dinur and an Amud. Nahar Dinur means a river of fire. The Gemara brings Ikit Filusa Benila. We table in water because we can't table in fire for obvious reasons. But the Gemara says Ikit Filusa Benila. Ikit if Tefillah is in fire. And then there's an Amud. And what is the beam of light? So the Nahar Dinur cleanses the not good. The beam of light raises the neshama from the lower Gan Eden into the higher Gan Eden, milmayla lamata, from the top down. The Nahar Dinur is a pasuk. Amud is a Sefer Rabbi. And Chassidus joins them together. That between one Gan Eden and the next. So this idea you need to forget is it's constant because every Gan Eden, like the other Gan Eden, there brings that there's infinite Gan Edens, and each Gan Eden is infinitely different than the Gan Eden before and the Gan Eden after. So you have to forget. And for sure, when the neshama leaves this world and goes l'mayla, same impression. That's what happens through Chibut HaKever and Kafakela and Gehenim. Besides, we don't really, it is an einish, it's a punishment. But besides, for the inyan of einish, it's an inyan pasht of zichuch. And depending on what the inyan loy toiv is, you have to have a different zichuch. For Averis, you go to Gehenim. But there's many things that are not Averis that are still Olam Hazeh. So this is what the Rebbe spoke about, and I want to read it inside, quickly. That quickly was 10 minutes, but that's how quick we go. 5 lines from the top of page Yud Gimel. No, 4 lines, at the end of the line. 4 lines. Top of page Yud Gimel, at the end of the line. V'gam achakach. even afterwards. After a person takes the food and drink that he ate, shalei l'shem shamayim, and he turns it around and he uses it for avodas Hashem, you still need a cleansing. A trace of the klipa that came from eating the dvar taiven, l'teyovim, remains. The reason is, when a person eats and drinks, immediately that food and drink becomes becomes a part of the person's flesh. That even though you did tshuva and you were mila this food l'kedusha, but the fact that for a minute or two you had pleasure also needs a cleansing, but not in Gehenim. It needs a cleansing before. The body goes through this being visited in the grave. To cleanse it, to purify its tumah. And of course, in this case, we don't mean tumah of an aved. We mean tumah from klipa, because even klipas nega is klipa, and if it's klipa, it's also tumah. That one received in the delights of this world and its pleasures. Mitumas klipas nega v'sheitit yudayim. The tumah of permitted things is bechlal not an aveda, but the etzemi that a person enjoyed his food is lamayla hela behested. You know this. You know the story. I told you the story once by Arichas. It's a story that I heard from Rabbi Reuben Al Shalom, my rabbi, the same Kaddish by the police station. He heard the story from his father. His father was upon him a goyben idiot. In the Polish world, they would call him a tzaddik. The Rebbe would call him Zeir Chassidish idiot. He was really a heichen idiot. Reuben, the Lina Rebbe, Dolan Rebbe, the Lina Rebbe. This is connected to bells. You probably know better than that. Delina, Dolan. Anyway, Rabbi Reuben, is such a big meyuchas. You name it, he's an einik. From the Divrei Chaim and from the Kozhnitzer Rebbe, across from the police station. But David is of a Gershon. I davened there for many, many years. So but his pride and joy was a brimtzich. He's a ziddichoy v'reinik. This is of all the citizens that he comes from. He's ziddichoy. Now I have a problem with that because this is a famous letter from the Rebbe where the ziddichoy wrote against the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe was shocked. The Prime Yola sent the Rebbe a sefer. The Rebbe I started reading it, and I came to this page and so what he writes, I closed the sefer. I stopped reading it, and it's very nervous, very uncomfortable. That topic was very, very uncomfortable. It wasn't that he disagreed with the Alter Rebbe. He says, he said Alter Rebbe lied. Alter Rebbe wrote in a siddur that he heard from the Maggid that Zman is Anivra. I don't believe the Alter Rebbe, which is a chutzpah, with all due respect. But he was a tzaddik gomer, an isha l'kiya. I don't get this. I don't get this. Machloikis between tzaddikim. We're never going to get it. Anyway, so he's very proud of this yichus, of the Ziddishavi yichus. Big mukubolim, big mukubolim. The Heschel is a Ditchoiv, and then his nephew was the Isaac was a Ditchoiv. And anyway, so he told me the story that when his father was a boy, he heard this from his father, and he told it to me. So when his father was a boy, his Zayd, his father's father, introduced him to the Brezhan Erov. The Brezhan Erov is called the Marsham. His family name, you know. Because the famous Magidim in Yerushalayim, Shvadron. His family name was Shvadron. So today in Yerushalayim you have big Misnagdish Magidim Shvadron. The Marsham, his family name was Shvadron. He was a Misnagid and he became a Chosid of the Ziddishav Rebbe. What was the story? The story was, so when Rabbi Reuben's father heard it from him, the Marsham was a very old man. And it was a story that happened to him when he was a younger man, with Rabbi Reuben's father's Elter Zayden Stamen. The Isaac was in the Chevy. It's a Maisa Pella. It's Mamash Hatzak V'Fella. Piliploim. The Zidde Chevy Mishpoche, the Mishpoche is Eichenstein. There's a Kranheitz of Altshuva Eichenstein. A Lubavitcher. And he's a descendant from the Zidde Chevy Mishpoche. Anyway, this is the story. That this Marsham was an Ilui. He was an incredible mind. His whole mishpacha was Chassid, he lived in Galicia, but he was too smart for Chassidus. He was I don't need a Rebbe, I'm my own Rebbe. Sam Sapozhnik. He was a Mesnagid. And then he got sick. And he almost died. Rabbi Reuben, I knew him, I talked about it. But Shangetzinden Lecht, that was the quote. But Shangetzinden, they lit candles. They were waiting for the Neshamas, the Queen's Neshama. And he popped up. He just came back from the dead. And he had what they call today an out-of-body experience. He had a clear vision. A clear vision. What was the vision? As is gekommen Lamaila, and mit dem Mishpah did the best Shamayla. What was the Tanya? It was an 18-year-old Eloi. He's learning to. This is the times of the Mitler Rebbe. Understand? This is times of the Mitler Rebbe. This is a long time ago. This is the 1820s. Times of the Mitler Rebbe. I think. I may be wrong, but I think. And they said, and they paskined, we don't need him. And they took him out of the Bezdin Shalmailo, and they're taking him away to the other side. And then he hears screaming. Someone is screaming in the Bezdin Shalmailo. In Golos Hamar Hazeh. Montman Amazalen and Teire Lishmo. Could you imagine times of the Mitler Rebbe? And the Shah, someone is screaming in the Bezdin Shalmailo. Today, in our Bitter Golos, Teire Lishmo, that's what you want, Teire Lishmo. And he's screaming. Had the Bezdin Shalmailo gepasket, we sollen bring him zurück. Bring him back. So they bring him back. He has this vision, he sees this all, and he's behind the wall. And this unknown voice is advocating for his life. And he's screaming and he's protesting, and the Bezdin Shalmailo said, "You're right. Bring him back. He's going to get life." So he says, "Who's this? Who just saved my life?" His Ayid was Heist Eichenstein. A Jew is named Eichenstein. Every day he comes up and he looks at the books. If he doesn't like the books, he changes them. Can I see him? Sure. They pick him up over this wall and he sees. And then he pops up. He's back. And Eichenstein was a Yid and a Shomer Beguf. He was a Rebbe in Galicia at that time, the Ziddische Rebbe. So his friends and family tell him, "Here's a Chan Yugamanchik. Misnaga de he, misnaga de her, you owe the guy a visit. He brought you back from the dead, Kipshute." He said, "I beg your father, because he was 18 years old. And the Seder by the Sheva was there'd be a line. He would see everybody. There'd be a line, he would see everybody the day they came. Anyway, they bring him to the front of the line and they apologize. And they say he's very weak. Of 10 days, he was on a banana peel, you understand? And when I lost him to the Sheva, he walked into the Cheder, in the Sheva, took a look at Michalash. So the Sheva said, when you see a Jew for the second time, you're supposed to faint. It's such a sweet story, such a Siddish story, such a wonderful story. But the end of the story was that when he came back from his faint, the Sheva said to him, "Junger Mann, wir haben mit dir Mekel gewesen. Jeden in Galicia sind in Orem. Da sind mit sie Mekel." He said, "Younger man, we will Mekel with you. Jews in Galicia are poor. You're a Rav. Be a Mekel." And the Brejane Rav and the Divrei Chaim were fire. Because the Divrei Chaim was very frum. And the Brejane Rav gave the Teirim. And that was his Ilan Godel, the Ziddische Rebbe, who was the Rebbe of the Divrei Chaim, told him that he should be a Mekel. It's very interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, why am I telling you this whole long story? Because if a Yida Eloi 180 years ago or 200 years ago, it's almost 200 years ago now. What do you want? Teil Lishma willst? So you start worrying about Tavis Heter. I enjoyed a piece of cake. You understand? But nevertheless, if a person ate a piece of cake and he enjoyed it, Kedusha it's not. So it's clean. So you need a zichuch. But it's not an aveda. So the Rebbe says inside, okay, therefore, the body needs to be cleansed in the grave, to clean it, and to purify it. From the uncleanness that it received with the pleasures of this world and its delights. It's kosher, it's klipa, but it's tumah. You see, because this is the rule. There's no in between. Lamaila, there's no parif. Lamata, there's a huge parif, and the parif keeps on stretching. But Lamaila, there's kedusha and klipa. When the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Vav, bittul or not bittul. Klipa, which is not bad, it's just not good, is metameh. I don't know if you remember, we learned Perek Vav. I made a point of singling out the word tumah. The Alter Rebbe uses the word tumah because it gives a sense of what Pnimis HaTorah is teaching you. Tumah isn't bad. It's just not tahara. Tahara is a state, a level. A lack of tahara, so you have a massive of tumah. A person enjoys Elam Hazeh, it's tumah, and you have to be removed. The tumah has to be removed. And that's what Chibut HaKever is. A person who never enjoys Elam Hazeh. Ki Rabbeinu HaKadosh doesn't need any cleansing. Why? Because Rabbeinu HaKadosh didn't have to have, Klal doesn't have any such problems. Rabbeinu HaKadosh passed away, kept coming home. He was still alive. Then the Rebbe is another area of taivas that people enjoy is not the pleasures of food, which become one with the person. So you have to clean it out of the body. This is more in the ruach, in the neshama. And therefore, this cleansing is not, it's also not in Gehenna, because we're not talking about Naveda. A person who's a chiyav of limud hateilim and speaks to the B'teilim, that's bittul teira. Bittul teira is a saying, the Gemara says, Dvar avaya boza v'gemer. It's not good. We're talking about a person who's not mechuyev to learn teira all day and all night. He's supposed to learn teira as much as he could. And because he's mechuyev to learn teira as much as he could, he's not avid on bittul teira when he talks to the B'teilim. But that doesn't make Dvarim B'Teilim a mitzvah, it's still tumah. And it needs to be cleansed. But this is not connected to the goof so much, and therefore, again, for example, Amaris, She'ein Yachal Lilmit, who's not able to learn, and therefore he has no chiv of Talmud Torah, so he's not over on Bittul Torah when he talks about the weather or politics or whatever it is, but tumah it is, therefore, tzorech letahir, nafshei, mitumah zudik klipa, so you have to purify yourself from this tumah, which is this klipa, which is noigal, and this is like the gugula b'kafakela. Kafakela happens to the neshama after it leaves the body, but it doesn't leave the space of the physical universe. It's still in Elam Hazeh, it's not in a goof, it's floating around in the air. We talked about this in the last class, the person speaks things he's not allowed to speak, which is in Aveda, like the Tzonis, Lashon Hara. And of course, this is true not just of mitzvahs Shabbat of Avedas Shabbat. It's also true of Avedas Shabbat Meiser. It says, Shehein Misholish Klipas Atmeres Agam. This is real Klipa, it's real evil, and it's real Tumah. It's much more severe. So the Rebbe says, Ein Kafa Kela Levadim Meil. So going through a cleansing process in the Chibut HaKever and Kafa Kela is not satisfactory, not sufficient. L'tayr to purify, L'havedan to remove, Tum Osei, the uncleanness, May HaNefesh from the Nefesh, because it becomes, the Rebbe writes in the footnote here, that it's not just like dust, it's like a fleck, like a spot, right? You have dust on your body, you go like this. But if you have actual dirt, you have to rub it off. So, Tumeh, which is not rags, just noiga, it's like dust. So and this is enough for this kafakela chitakevit. But, for an Aveda, so the Alter Rebbe says, Rak tzricha leir legein, to go into Gehenna. And he continued, in addition to Dvarim Asurim being an Aveda, but again a me, if you're one of those Yidden who can learn Torah, Ubemela, it's not only a question of Dvarim B'Teilim, it's a question of Bittul Torah. Ve'esik with Dvarim B'Teilim, and instead you're gazing in Dvarim B'Teilim. So here again, because in this case, for this person, Bittul Torah is an Aveda, so ain't Kafakel Levadi Meir. Kafakel is enough for Dvarim B'Teilim Be'heter. Just like Chibut HaKever is enough for enjoying Taivas Heter. But if it's an Aveda, and there's two types of an Aveda. One Aveda that did something wrong, I spoke Lashon Hara. Another Aveda was I spoke something not right, I was Mavatal Teira. It's a bittul mitzvahs asay, it's a bittul essay, but it's an Aveda. For this you have to have Gehenna. It says the Rebbe ain't Kafakel Levadi Meir Lenafshi. Kafakel is not sufficient. Lemarka, to wash it, to Lazarcha, to purify it. Like ancient Chamur, more severe punishment. Shamanishma Bittul Teira, which one is punished Bittul Teira, Bepratus specifically. And the Rebbe says there's two parts to this Einish. Number one, Vad Einish, I call the whole Bittul Mitzvah. There's a general Einish for neglecting any mitzvah, say, Machmas Atzlos, because not doing a mitzvah is considered lazy, which has been Gehenim Shalshalach, but Makamach. Then there's an Einish Prati for Bittul Teira. It says when a person doesn't do a mitzvah, say, he goes to Gehenim Shalshalach. They roll him in snow. Why does he go to a Gehenim Shalshalach? Because the ability to miss a mitzvah comes from a coldness. And it's mida connected mida. They give cold against cold. Where you cure a cold is with more cold. Where you cure heat is with more heat. And this is Kafakela, Chibut HaKever, and Gehenna. And again, the point is, this is not about, we're not focusing on the oinshim, the punishment part. Is the only way the Shama goes Lamaila is with this Zichach that forgets about this world and it goes up Lamaila. Now I'm going to stop now because I want to do a Yem Yem. I just want to say something to you that I found curious and I got into trouble for this once. And that is the following. The Rebbe spoke, I think, in a way that other Gedei Yisrael didn't speak. And that is, the Rebbe wrote to everybody under many, many different circumstances, in many, many, many different letters. That when somebody, God forbid, loses somebody, the expression in Yiddish is has felt, somebody is missing. They're in this world, however you understand it, participating in the lives of the people that they love, b'chayim. They rejoice in their joy, they're sad in their sadness, they daven for them, they made it achbarabim for them, and so on and so forth. And the Rebbe gives the impression that this is not only for tzaddikim and tzaddikim gedolim and for Rebbes, every Yid. You know, just like it says in the Zohar, the Sicha HaYadua, that by Achasan you have 3 generations, the Rebbe stretches that. B'chlal, the deceased relative is always involved with his iniklach, with his children, with his grandchildren, and he rejoices. The Rebbe wrote to a father who lost his wife, tell your children that the mother is, the only thing that they don't have is that she doesn't, they don't see her, and she can't tuck them in. But she davens for them, and she's happy when they're happy, and she's sad when they're sad. They should do everything in their power to make the mother happy. This is what the Rebbe wrote to a man to tell his children that they lost their mother. And there really is a difference. We learned it in Igris, in the Thursday class of the Igris Kiddush, which happens occasionally here. Occasionally. That's Machzach Hamol, we learn Igris Kiddush. But in any case, it's a shtickle stira, l'chayre. Because we say up in Kabbalah that a Rebbe, a Tzaddik Gom was another story. But besides for that they're a Balabosim themselves, the best thing that can happen to a neshama is that it should go away. It should leave the goof. It should leave the space of Elam Hazeh. The Gemara says, "Mutav de l'daine." It's worth to go through all kinds of tzaddis, all kinds of yisurim, even yisuri yiv, to come to Elam Hazeh. The Gemara about Rabbi Nakad, about Elisha Ached and the Meir and the Yechanan, that he put him into Gehenna and took him out of Gehenna. The worst thing is not to get to Elam Yisrael. And one of the rules of getting into Elam Yisrael is you got to forget this life. And the Rebbe says, "What forget? You're involved with your relatives." So I don't know how to reconcile this contradiction. I just know if the Rebbe said it, it's emes. It's not just making people feel good as they is. But there is this other side for sure. That the process of Shuvah Kevin and Kafakela and Gehenim and Amud and Nadur and Amud is a process of making the neshama distance itself from this world. So you can't tell us. And next week we're going to learn about Chochmas Chitzenius. We'll start. Okay, good morning everybody. We're going to do a yeh. I'm going to